their results in any time from now. But be that as it may, I'm still joined with my panelists. Many thanks for your patience, gentlemen and lady. I'd like to begin with the lady right here. Of course, this particular round of by-election was touted as a litmus test as we go forward to the 2022 general election. Now let's break it down. We begin in Kabuchai. Of course, Ford Kenya retained that particular seat. UDA was definitely a contestant. They fronted the candidate in that particular by-election. So speaking to the larger goal of Luhya unity, the larger goal of Deputy President William Ruto making inroads into these particular areas, especially the Luhya region. Earlier on, he mentioned that, yes, you call him during the church fundraisings, but he wants to see something in return, perhaps hinting to this particular round of by-elections. Let's begin with you, Gloria. Is this a blow to the momentum of UDA coming off from the Msambweni by-election?
Absolutely not. Absolutely not.
Why?
Show me one party that is merely 3 months old that has been able to front candidates with successively in those all those by-elections and that have actually come on the top 5. You understand what I mean? Show me one freshly launched political party that could actually boast of having a presence nationally, not only in a certain region. You know, it's not a tribal party. It's actually at the basis of forming its national kind of presence all over the 47 counties. So I don't think it's a blow for UDA. Actually, if you ask me, I think it's a win for UDA in terms of political parties, because in a very short time, in a very short span, they've been able to convince, whether it is 100, 200, a handful of voters to actually vote for their candidate based on the political party that has been fronted. If you go to places such as Kisii County, where we don't really care much about political parties, what we do is we are more interested in the candidate. You will find that the UDA candidate in Kisii actually got some of his votes in the Kiamokam ward because of the political party. So I don't think it's a blow for UDA. I think what they've actually managed to do in a very short period of time is that they've managed to brand themselves as a national party, because in all these by-elections, they have fronted candidates. We're talking about the London ward, we're talking about Hell's Gate, we're talking about, you know, they've fronted candidates. So at the end of the day, it was a very good opportunity for UDA to sort of, you know, place their presence as a political party. On the other hand, I don't think these by-elections are litmus tests for anything. What I think these by-elections are, this is literally a small glance, a sort of preview of what 2022 is going to look like if we are not careful. Remember, we had 4 by-elections that were on the level of the member of county assembly. We are talking about 4 wards, yeah?
Right. Yes.
Or is it 5 wards, I think? And this is the amount of divisive politics. This is the amount of heightened political atmosphere that we have just coming from 5 wards. Now, what about when we have the general election and we have 1,450 wards and going into an election? When you're talking about the by-election of the constituencies, those were only 2 constituencies that were carrying out by-elections. What about when we go to 47? When we go to 290 constituencies, and then when we have the counties and the extra and the presidential. Okay. The only thing that I would say is, I think a lot of Kenyans were actually putting to test the independence of IEBC, and a lot of Kenyans were actually looking so much so, not necessarily on the political parties and the candidates, but how peaceful these elections are going to be. So if they're talking about a litmus test, we're talking about the litmus test of the peace surrounding the election process in Kenya.
Okay.
So for me, I still insist that if we are not going to do anything with IEBC in terms of its independence, we are really in big trouble. Remember, Jesse, all these counties where we had by-elections are the same counties where they have just passed the Building Bridges initiative. All these counties have actually agreed that BBI is going to solve our divisive politics, our election violence, our, you know, all those issues that we have around the elections. And yet, yesterday was the day that we tabled BBI in Parliament.
True.
And yet, you can see that even the counties that believe in the Building Bridges initiative process are not able to exercise what they're trying to sell to 50 million Kenyans. So for me, the question really remains, what do we need to clean up? Do we need to go into a referendum to change our constitution in order for us to have peace? Or do we need to deal with the independence and the transparency of our electoral processes in Kenya?
Well, electoral reforms was definitely key among the 9 thematic agendas due to the handshake. But be that as it may, Michael Agwanda, even as you bring in your input on this particular issue, as we focus on perhaps Kabuchai among the various constituencies that had the by-election, we did see an alliance of various political figureheads in the run-up to this particular elections playing a key role in Matungu and Kabuchai. Do you agree with the sentiments of Gloria Roba that perhaps this is not really a litmus test in terms of coalitions going forward into 2022, but it's simply about the level of intolerance and trust within the independent institutions, among them IEBC? What's your take?
I strongly believe that UDA had an egg over their face. I don't think there's any place that the Deputy President has gone to several times than any other place in this country than Western Province. And therefore, when I look at Kabuchai and I see that Ford Kenya has actually enabled, has claimed that position, it's an egg over the face of UDA, and they have to rethink their strategy. I don't think doing so many Harambes and going to so many churches equal to votes. People want to hear your ideologies. People want to know what is different from your candidate amongst all those candidates that are presented. People want to know whether the roads will be built by that individual politician, not the big name in it like the Deputy President and many Harambes that have been done there. The Deputy President and his team, especially the UDA, must now start preaching development and not divisive politics. They must now start investing on individuals that will talk about matters that concerns the village, the community that people are coming from, not necessarily the big politics from the Nairobi and the Aura in it, the clamor, the big vehicles and the convoys and the helicopters that people have seen. I think people are starting to realize that politics is local. And if it's local, it can only be local when it is localized by our local leaders. You might come with all the clamor that they've come with over the years now, and then when it comes to a decision point, people will look at the person that has been presented to them. And I think that is what has happened with Ford Kenya, and that is what has happened in Kabuchai, and it's happening in other places in this by-election. But I want to say something again, Rogers. I think this election or by-election was not free and fair. Looking at the level of intimidation by politicians, elected politicians, we have information that some voters were not even allowed to go to vote because some politicians literally, unleash violence in areas that were perceived to belong to another party. For example, in some areas where perhaps there were more Ford Kenya voters or ODM voters, you'll find politicians that were aligned either to a Amani National Party going to block them by unleashing some threats, and some were even being whipped. And this was being done by elected leaders. I wonder whether they will be able to do this thing in a national election where everybody is for themselves and not necessarily for this by-election where there were only 2 constituencies and maybe 4 wards that were being fought for. I really think going forward for the politicians, the political parties, as well as the IBC, if we cannot stop the level of violence that we are seeing, then we cannot say that BBI and a handshake is going to be a solution to our problem. The only thing that we must impress upon is those politicians that some of them were found to have been violating some of the freedom of expression as well as freedom of, voting and expressing them, electorally expressing themselves by going freely to the polling station must be stopped. And some of them that were found to have insulted or abused the electoral officers must also be apprehended and answerable to those very charges. We want to see a situation where basically going to vote is a place of happiness, that you want to elect your leader. Going to vote is a place where you don't expect violence. Going to vote is a place where you're sure that your vote matters. In this case, that was not the case. And I want to a little bit agree with Gloria that if we don't look into those processes, then 2022 will be a place where basically you're dealing with an IBC that you cannot trust, you're dealing with a politician that you cannot trust, you're dealing with the police that you cannot think that they are independent, you're dealing with the process itself, and then you will have greater voter apathy in 2022 than perhaps what we're seeing here today. And I think that might happen if we don't do great civic duty of enlightening our political parties to soften their tones, so that they don't go after each other's throat, but they sell their ideology and philosophy, and they sell to people what the people want, not necessarily what their party bosses want. And that is where the problem is. Because, I'm voting for the deputy president. I am voting for the party, but not the person that will make a change in your community. That has to stop, and we have to review how we want to vote our leaders.
So that seems to be the nature of our politics. You mentioned key issues. Politics is definitely local, and independence and perhaps faith in the process is quite key going forward, even as we're a few months away to the 2022 general election. But even as that happens, I bring in Kasim Tandaza. It will be interesting to get your take on this, what this by-election means for parties, bearing in mind the clamor for the formation of a coast-based political party. Of course, ODM leader Raila Odinga is touring the region as we speak, and we've seen the developments. Of course, that plight to form a political party for the coast region seems to hit a snag one or the other. Joho and Raila Odinga seem to be against it. Give us your take on this.
Before I go to that, Jesse,
okay,
I would want to comment on one thing about this new party called the UDA. Calling UDA a new party is not getting the facts right, given that parties in Kenya are not really by registration or how long they've been there. It is by whoever is fronting that party. And if UDA, as it is now, is fronted by the deputy president, then it is not right to say that it is 3 months old. People go for the leader of the party. It's not actually about the name. Remember, even UDA is just rebranded. It is a party that has been in existence for quite a while. It has even members in parliament. So rebranding something doesn't make it new. So this is, and more so with the deputy president, then we should know whatever happens in that party, it is a direct influence or a direct as a result of the deputy president. Them having lost, for sure, it affects the deputy president who is fronting this party. But as it were, those are party issues. I don't belong into that party. It's upon them to see where they are going wrong. Probably we could be staring at a paper tiger. I don't know, time will tell, but that is it. So when it comes to the issue of the cost-based political party, I think there has been a misconception about what we are talking about, because I'm one of those who is really agitating for coastal unity. And when we talk about coastal unity, ours is even much better, because we are not talking about a tribe in this case. When you look at the other parties, you can actually relate them to a tribe, basically all the other parties. And even from this by-election, the results would show which tribe basically ascribes to that particular party. Even in the London ward by-election which you are referring to, you can more or less relate it to a particular tribe. But when you are talking about cost, we are talking about a region. And yes, the time is ripe to have our unity. The time is ripe also to have our leader from this region. Because reality is, in Kenya, you are well represented by your leader from that region because of the uniqueness of that region. You cannot compare Coast region in terms of infrastructure with the other regions, especially the Mount Kenya and the Rift Valley. You can't. In terms of health issues, you can't. So how are we going to solve all this? Our land issues in Coast, they are unique. You cannot relate them to land issues in Nairobi or in Mount Kenya or somewhere else. So those are the issues that are actually necessary for us to have this unity. We are not talking of a party for cost. It will not help us. Where will it lead us to? And as leaders, we know that. We are talking of, if we can be united, speak with one voice, have a leader, because at the end of the day, in a democracy like this, you need to negotiate with others. Even if, as it were, that is the governor, Joho, wants to go for the presidency, I don't think in his right mind or in anybody's right mind will think that he's going to win this presidency alone. He'll have to negotiate with other leaders, and that is where we actually want to go, that in the next government, then we should be in there by right, not as a favor. Well, we expected that other leaders from other regions will oppose this because they have been beneficiaries of our disunity all along. You know, everybody comes during election time, everybody picks his group, picks his leaders, and that is. But how long can that continue? That is what you're asking us.
So it seems to be increasing.
Going forward.
Okay. Allow me to cut you short. It seems to be increasing the stake of the coastal region in terms of the national outlook, but we'll definitely continue deliberating on this. Professor, I'd like you to give the final word after the short break, even though as I give Gloria just 30 seconds, right of reply. A lot has been mentioned about UDA not being a new party and the likes. Just give us your take briefly.
I think it is.
Yeah, I think
Professor, kindly, we'll get back to you after the short break, so we give you adequate time, even as we talk about the independence of institutions and the likes. Let's just get a quick take from Gloria, perhaps 30 seconds, shortly.
It is incorrect to say that, first of all, UDA is William Ruto's party. I am yet to see anywhere where he comes out and says that this is a party where he's a party leader or a member of that party. And the second thing is that, yes, UDA is a new party. It only came to the limelight in January 2021. So it is 3 months old. And the fact that it is 3 months old and it's competing with veteran political parties such as ANC, KANU, ODM, and the likes, including Jubilee, then you have to say that we are talking about it on national television. That means that it has made the strides that it deserves, and we're yet to see what they're going to do in the next coming by-elections or the general elections in 2022.
Okay, so win or lose, you've made a difference.
Absolutely.
Okay, let's take a short break. Professor Gitile Naituli, after the break, we'll definitely get to pick your mind on this particular developments. Also, keen to note, it's not all politics, so when we come back, we'd also want to highlight the latest in terms of the state taking over the running of the standard gauge railway from the Chinese firm. Also in terms of education, a couple of latest developments as we move closer to the KCPE and KCSE examinations. Do stay with us. You're watching Morning Express. We'll be back in a few.